Hello, welcome to today's video. This is a J takeover of Heather's channel, so isn't that good? Today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 books. I don't read anywhere near as often as Heather does. I like different types of books that Heather does, so this is just going to be an interesting change of pace, maybe? Different types of books. We'll see. So yeah, I've picked out 5 books that I would say are my favourite books, and I'm just going to talk about them. There's no theme, there's nothing super fancy. I'm just going to say what each book is, say why I like it, and that's it. So my first is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. This is by Yuval Noah Harari. It's rated 4.39 on Goodreads, so the internet likes it too. I read this in 2017. In 2017, sort of like towards like the end-ish of 2017, I bought a few books because I wanted to get back into reading, and this is one of the books I bought at that point in time. I picked it up and I couldn't put it down. I read the whole thing in a couple of weeks, which is fast for me, to be fair. So yeah, I really liked it. It really sort of kicked me back into reading, I think. And yeah, I recommend it to everyone. Some people that I've recommended to have actually read it as well, and they've really liked it too. So yeah, that's good. The book itself is a sort of biological and anthropological insight or look into what makes humans humans, really. So it kind of briefly explains the actual evolution of Homo sapiens, and how we outcompeted like the other subspecies of humans, like Neanderthals. Yeah, it's kind of explained in quite not dumbed down, quite it's very easy to understand. You know, it's not aimed at scientists. It's sort of accessible to everybody, and it kind of splits the history of humankind down into the first. Yeah, as I said, the first bit is sort of like how humans came about, and why we have advantages, or had advantages, over the other subspecies. And one of the main things that it keeps coming back to is language. So around a similar time in our sort of evolutionary past, we started using fire to cook our food, and that meant that our brains could get bigger, and a benefit of that was a massive increase in our ability to communicate with one another, and that brought with it a world of possibilities, which obviously, you know, the progress that we've made as a species is quite incredible. So it talks about how about 10,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution happened. So humans decided that rather than walking and being hunter-gatherers, they figured out that they could just stay in one place and grow food where they were, and that was called the agricultural revolution. And it actually posed quite an interesting question in the book that I remember. So, you know, the point of any species, right, is to survive and thrive and recreate itself. And this interesting question was, did humans domesticate wheat, or did wheat domesticate us? Because obviously, you know, as part of the agricultural revolution, we started growing a lot of wheat. And from the wheat's perspective, you know, that's a good thing. That's what it wanted all along. So yeah, that was interesting. And then it sort of touches on the scientific revolution and the sort of the industrial revolution that came after that, you know, which sort of started about 500 years ago. The author does have some more recent books that sort of talks about like the present and the future, but I think this is a really good place to start, because obviously it's about the history of us. My second book is this one. It's called Dear Future Historians, Lyrics and Exegesis of Rao Reynolds for the Music of Enter Shikari. That's a bit of a mouthful. So yeah, Enter Shikari are a band. They are one of, if not my all-time favourite bands of all time. I've been listening to them since I was a kid, like, I don't know, sort of 13, 14. And as much as it's kind of cheesy to say, I feel like they've grown up with me. You know, their music has evolved, and I still really like the music that they're putting out now. Yeah, so they're one of my favourite bands. Their music sounds really good to my ears. You know, I listen to them because I really enjoy how they sound, but also they talk about really important things. You know, they're not afraid to get political, and they talk about some of the big issues that sort of, you know, we're facing today. And yeah, so this book came out in 2017. I think early 2017. I got it at the end of 2017. I got it for my birthday. I don't think I've ever read it sort of cover to cover, but I've flicked through it a load of times, and I will have read every page by now. They do have some newer books as well, because obviously some of the music wasn't covered in this. But yeah, this is basically just a bunch of their songs. It sort of, you know, has the lyrics in there, and then for a select few of the songs, there's an essay, and that essay covers, you know, what they were thinking at the time, when they wrote the song, you know, what it means, how they came to think of them. You know, there's a lot of metaphors in Shikari songs, and, you know, some of them are explained in this book, and I just think that's really nice. I've had this book for like 5 years, and it still sometimes gives me goosebumps when I read it, so that's why it is in my top 5 all-time favourite books. There's also a lot of cool photos in there actually as well. I should have mentioned that before. That was a long time ago, they're like kids. But yeah. The third book that I've chosen is this one. It's All Systems Red, The Murderbot Diaries #1 by Martha Wells. So recently Heather and I swapped books for a weekend, and this is the one of the books that she gave to me. We actually did do a video on it, so you can go and watch the video about when I first read this book, and when I got her to read one of my books as well. Yeah, so this is a fiction book, which I don't normally read fiction actually, but I think reading this book has kind of got me into it. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I read it quite quickly. It's a really small book, so it was really easy to just read it. I read it in like less than a week, which again is fast for me. Yeah, and so this is book #1. Book #5 arrived yesterday, so after I finish filming this I'm going to go and read that. But yeah, Heather had an ulterior motive for choosing this book, and that was that they're quite expensive, and she wanted me to get hooked on it so I would buy the rest of them, which has succeeded because I have, because they're really good. I really like the world building. I'm going to read the back of this just because I think it's such an interesting way to put it. I have to make myself do things I don't want to do, like talk to humans. In a corporate-dominated, spacefaring future, planetary missions must be approved and supplied by the company. Exploratory teams are accompanied by company-supplied security robots for their own safety. But in a society where contracts are awarded to the lowest bidder, safety isn't a primary concern. On a distant planet, a team of scientists are conducting surface tests, shadowed by their company-supplied bot, a self-aware sec unit that has hacked its own governor module and refers to itself, though never out loud, as Murderbot. Scornful of humans, all it really wants to do is to be left alone long enough to figure out who it is. But when a neighbouring mission goes dark, it's up to the scientists and their Murderbot to get to the truth. So yeah, like I reading that made me like think like, yeah, I definitely want to read this book. And I did, and I really enjoyed it. It really lived up to the sort of hype that Heather had given it, and the sort of the blurb had given it. The world building's really good. I really like how it continues in the sort of the next books. It's also kind of critical of capitalism, I think, in a kind of, you know, you can kind of tell that what the author is alluding to is if humans continue to progress in the way that we are and we become a multi-planetary society, if we continue using capitalism as our sort of way of dealing with things, this is what things could look like. And I think that that's a very interesting take. Yeah, I don't want to say anything else because I don't want to give it away, and I think it's such a good book. I think it's just worth reading. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that one. Book #4, I actually read that on the Kindle, so I don't have a physical copy, but I think with the editing magic there'll be one here. It's called Atomic Habits, an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones, which sounds like clickbait, but I mean, I think it's actually a pretty good description of what the book's about. So yeah, I read this last year. I read this in 2021. I Wish I'd have taken some notes on it actually. I really feel like it's one that I want to go back and reread and actually take some notes on, because a lot of the tips and tricks in there are actually really useful. The point of the book is it kind of breaks down at the very core what a habit is, and that's actually what the atomic refers to in the title. It talks about how you can really break down a habit into actually like multiple smaller habits until you get all the way down to the smallest one, which is an atomic habit. He goes into a lot of detail about how you can change a habit, and that changing a habit, whether that be creating a new one or getting rid of a bad one, actually takes a lot longer than you think. He talks about how habits can sort of compound. So if you've got multiple habits on the go that are good for you, then they will kind of compound over a long period of time if you can stick to them over a long period of time. And he makes the sort of comparison of like sort of compound interest, about how a small amount of interest over a very long period of time can really add up quite a lot. Something that I thought was really interesting, something that's kind of stuck with me, is how he talks about how rather than setting goals, what's actually a lot more useful is to think about the systems that you sort of using day to day, and how you live your life. So rather than sort of starting at the big, I want to do this thing, it's like the type of person who would do that thing, what would they be doing in their day to day to actually get there? And you know, he does talk about a bit more about sort of changing your identity to sort of be the type of person who does the type of things that you want to do, as opposed to what you like sort of just focusing on what you actually want to achieve. You know, they're the core points. It's explained a hell of a lot better in the book, obviously. You know, if self-improvement is something that you're interested in, I think reading this book, or even just reading a summary of the book, honestly, and then, you know, deciding if that's something that's worth picking up for you, I think it would be really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed the book. Book number 5 is an interesting one. So it's The 4-Hour Work Week, Escape the 9 to 5, Live Anywhere and Join the New Rich. It sounds like hyperbole, and it is. It's a really good book. I really enjoyed it, but there's a lot to criticise about this book. It's rated 3.92 on Goodreads, because it's a good book, but you've really got to take it with a big pinch of salt. So it's very preachy. It advocates for some business sort of life practices that I don't think are super ethical, but that doesn't make it not interesting. It is a very interesting book. I personally found it very inspiring, actually. It really made me think about outsourcing and delegating, and actually just like eliminating things that you don't actually need to do as well. It talks a lot about the 80-20 principle, where, you know, 80% of the results come from 20% of the actual work. And I think that is actually something that's, you know, maybe not something that you should always live your life by, but it's definitely something that you should always keep in mind, I think. Yeah, it specifically made me think about automation quite a lot. So I'm a software developer, so a big part of my job is figuring out what computers can do and getting them to do that, to like automate that job away from a human. And I think this book really solidified for me how important that is, sort of going forwards, and how, you know, if I wanted to sort of set up a business, I think I would reread this book and really take note on the sort of the practices that he talks about. Something that I really took away from this book, which I genuinely can't remember if it's sort of intentionally promoted in the book or if it just made me think of it, is that you can just treat life like a series of experiments. I personally take life quite seriously, and I think reading this book made me kind of realise that there's actually no downside to just experimenting with your life and seeing what you can change and seeing what you can make work for you. So yeah, I think if you can read it and take it with a pinch of salt, I think it's definitely worth reading. If you can put aside the like eye roll moments where it's like really, really preachy. Thank you for listening to my top 5 books. I intentionally tried to make it kind of varied as to what genres they are, but I do genuinely think these are my top 5 books. Yeah, if you liked this video, you should hit the like button, you should subscribe, and you should leave a comment to say that you want Jay to take over this channel more often, because maybe I could do that. So yeah, bye.